Welcome in, everybody. You are listening to SEC State of Mind, presented by FanDuel. I am Taylor Davis, joined as always by my co-host, Jason Campbell. And, guys, the regular season is officially in the books, crazy as it may seem. And, I'm sure all of us woke up on Sunday. Wow, man, I can take a breather. The regular season's behind us. I can put up my Christmas decor, conference. Wrong. The craziest day in my career, and I'm sure a lot of people's, the craziest day in recent memory took place this past week as the coaching carousel became the coaching roller coaster. And we all officially got some answers. So obviously, we got to talk about all of the big news. And Jason, as you wrapped up the regular season down on the plains in the Iron Bowl, and then you head into all of the madness on Sunday. We'll get into the specifics here in just a second, but just your overall take as someone that I know has gripes with the calendar on all the chaos that ensued within such a short amount of time.
First of all, Taylor, I get on to you to the fact that you just said putting up a Christmas tree on Sunday.
I did.
I would have thought that your Christmas tree would have already been done. No. Like everybody else now. Once Halloween is over, people just skip right through Thanksgiving, putting the fall pumpkins up with the straw and the hay and all those things that come with fall. And they just go right directly putting the Christmas tree up. And it happened to me this year. Immediately the tree had to go up. Decorations had to be pulled out left and right.
I hear you.
So, I don't have to worry about that right now in the middle of all the chaos in college football because our tree's up and everything's going and rolling. So with that being said, Saturday across college football was intriguing. Yeah. Intriguing Saturday, right? When you think about all the games that was played on Friday that had playoff implications, that had conference championship implications. And then everyone's watching the Iron Bowl Saturday because you got Utah, you got Vandy, you got Texas, you got all these other schools watching to see, do I have a shot to get in if Auburn knocks off Alabama?
Yeah.
And again, the Iron Bowl goes down to, a crazy ending, right? And it seems to be that way when it's in Jordan-Hare. But when you talk about the teams now that are still on the fence, they got to wait a whole nother week to figure out if they actually going to get in. So if you're a Vanderbilt, you don't know how to feel right now. You don't know if you're in the playoff hunt or not, but you have a 10-2 record. Your record tells you, your scheduling tells you should be in. But then you look at Texas, they're sitting there 9-3. Texas beat Vanderbilt. But then, Texas lost to Georgia on the road. But they beat A&M. Who's undefeated. So what's Texas' argument? So a lot of this is going to come up over the next couple of weeks and everything. So I still have a problem with the scheduling of signing day being 4 days after the season is over. Mm-hmm. I gripe with it because as a person that's involved with NIL and working at a university and helping in different ways, I see the other side of it. So you just played a game Saturday. Sunday morning, coaches were announced, correct?
Right.
Okay. You got a dead period that starts on Monday where coaches can't go and visit recruits in person. Signing day is Wednesday. So a lot of these decisions are getting pushed because of signing day. And you don't even got your whole staff together yet. And you're trying to figure out, how do I get this recruit? Who am I keeping? Who am I bringing with me? Mm-hmm. All these different things. Then you look at the Lane train. That one was difficult, Taylor, because if we're going to say it's about the players.
All right, now you're skipping ahead a little bit. Hang on, we got to tee this up appropriately.
Yeah, I was on my rant this morning.
It's hard not to. But in terms of all of that happening in a day's time frame, and to your point about signing day being so quickly right after that, how does that challenge the university? What all is happening behind the scenes right now? We know about the staff still not being in place, but what is kind of the operational element in those 3 days? Because ultimately you got to feel like this is going to be looked at after this season.
Yeah. So the first thing is you had recruits in town on the weekend.
Uh-huh.
And you had some official, some unofficial, right? So now the recruits are there while this change is happening.
Yeah.
So if a recruit is like, I don't know who I'm attached to right now, that's why I say you at this point of stage in college football, you're not just marrying the coach, the individual no more. You have to marry the university.
Totally.
Because change is inevitable. Change can happen at any time. And that's life and that's the world, right? So you got to figure out like, okay, change can sometimes be a great thing.
Yeah.
Some people look at change mentally and they automatically think, oh, this is something negative, or it's not what I thought of. So it causes fear. You know what I'm saying? So fear keeps you from doing great things and fear keeps you from accomplishing great things because it's not comfortable. So in order to grow, it has to become uncomfortable. And I think in these situations, you have to give it a chance. You have to be open-minded to change. And then you have to like take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Don't try to figure everything out so fast, because as soon as decisions was happening, and with me working with Auburn, as soon as decisions happen, even with the staff, all of a sudden parents are getting hit up of recruits. Kids are getting hit up with recruits from all these other schools that's already in place, right? Trying to say, this is our opportunity to strike right now.
Right.
They're trying to strike on your kids that's automatically on your roster right now. Even though they can't go in the portal to January the 2nd, they're striking right now before your staff can even have a chance to even meet with the kids.
Yeah.
You know, so you're already having to fight an uphill battle immediately. So Wednesday is signing day. That's tomorrow. You don't really know what that's going to look like completely, right? Because there's different ties and different things that come to that. And there's a lot of schools in the same position in the SEC, trying to get staffs together, trying to get, people in place, trying to get roles in place. A lot. Taylor, you only had 72 hours to figure all this out since you got hired on Sunday morning. Right. That's a lot. You can't get it all done in that short amount of time. That's why I say you move signing day back to the middle of December. It gives you at least 2.5 weeks since your last regular season game, so everything's not in chaos or flux.
Seriously, because you also got to assume your current players are asking questions that they deserve answers to, but technically you don't have yet. The future potential players that are about to sign are going, yo, I feel good about this, but who's going to be my defensive coordinator? Like there's so many elements that remain unknown, and yet you're expecting total commitment and big decisions to be made in the same time. So it's very convoluted right now, and you got to think a year like this is going to make it be reevaluated because it has made no sense and it's caused a lot of drama. And you can't say drama without mentioning Lane Kiffin. And so let's go ahead and approach this conversation directly because there's so many elements to it. We have been tracking this for months. It feels like it has really taken the college football season, certainly Ole Miss's season, by a chokehold, which is unfortunate because they are more than likely headed to the playoff. But Lane Kiffin ultimately makes a decision to head to Baton Rouge. He is now the head coach of the Fighting Tigers and will be running into Death Valley next year wearing the purple and gold, leaving Oxford behind after 6 years there in what was a bit of a contentious process between him, the athletic director, administration. Florida was over in the wing, feeling like they were still in the fight. They kind of got left in the 11th hour, and it truly came down to Oxford or Baton Rouge. Ultimately, Lane Kiffin deciding he wanted to pursue an opportunity at LSU, which will also mean he will no longer coach Ole Miss, regardless of how far they make it into the postseason. It's the very reason that my guy Marty Smith was held hostage. Prayers up to my guy. But he finally got the answers on the runway, basically, at the airport as Lane Kiffin headed out. But Jason, there has been uproar the entire time. There has been debate. There has been frustration. There's elation in Baton Rouge. I mean, they're hyped. They feel like they got their guy. It's why they fired Brian Kelly. Your take on this, because you said on this podcast a few weeks ago, if he leaves, it will screw the program. David Pollock came on, felt very certain he was staying at Ole Miss. But LSU gave him an offer he couldn't refuse, and he ultimately saw that as a dream opportunity, and he took it. Your ultimate take on – let's separate these two things, though, because I think the decision and the way it was gone about are different things, and that's why I think the uproar has continued. But your take on Lane Kiffin's ultimate decision.
Yeah, let's take our time on this one. Let's deep throw the ice.
Because we haven't talked about it enough this year.
Right. And people kind of want to hear, right? So I would say this. I told people 2 weeks ago this decision was already made.
Mm-hmm.
And that if he was going to stay at Ole Miss, if you got the engagement ring, and as a man, if you hadn't proposed with it and you still got it, then you're not going to commit to it.
Yeah.
Because you would be excited to go ahead and say, as soon as you get it, I can't wait to get on my knee to do this, right? So the fact that Ole Miss had gave him the papers to sign weeks ago, and he sat there and looked at them and didn't sign those papers.
Yeah.
And then as it kept going and going, that told me, oh, he's going to LSU. At that point in time, I thought it was LSU in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And then as closer we got, you're like, nah, it's LSU. And the whole thing about his family going to Baton Rouge to see Baton Rouge and everything, that came out to be true.
Right.
Right. So you don't do all those things if you're not finna transition.
Mm-hmm.
If you was going to stick at Ole Miss,
you would have shut everybody up a long
time. Shut everything
time.
down, and you'd have signed them papers weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because you know it as much as anybody, Taylor. Distractions amongst a football team can mess things up. If you're a coach that preaches about distractions, you would have eliminated that distraction. Now, it's not to say he don't have the right to go to LSU, right? Because LSU is a prominent program. It is one of the top jobs, right? Like, that's his right. But to say you making it about the players, you can't say that. Because if you was going to make it about the players, you would have said, okay, to my staff, they won't allow me to coach the guys in the playoff, which is understandable. I don't want you in my building if you're not fully committed to my program.
Yeah.
So you're not, that's just like being in a house and we divorced. Like, you know,
get out.
If we're going to live in the same house, you know, we might as well just stick together.
Yeah.
So if it's going to be this situation, if you're Lane, you couldn't thought that Ole Miss was going to allow you to stay in the building and coach. Like, this causes friction. So if you're going to do the right thing, how about you tell your staff, instead of telling them, if you don't go with me now, you can't come. How about you tell them, hey, man, I love the players. We come too far. You guys stay back and coach the players. I'll take me and my recruiting coordinator. We'll go ahead and go to LSU. We'll start recruiting. We'll start working on the roster while you guys coach these guys through the playoffs, and you still can field calls for recruits from your job. Mm-hmm. But you owe it to these players to try to go and win a championship, even if I'm not there. Yep. To give them the ultimatum, if it's true that he gave them the ultimatum to come or not at that time, that's not right to do that if it's about the players.
There are so many caveats to this whole thing, and I'm glad you brought that up, because at face value, you start questioning, all right, now let's all really think about this. If this were us, if we found ourselves the hottest commodity in our respective industry one year, and you have every single opportunity at your disposal, you are the top priority for every potential job on the market right now. You really think you're just going to chunk it up and go, no, I'm happy where I am? No, you're going to hear these out, because this opportunity genuinely may never come again. Like, you got to strike while the iron's hot. I think the frustration for the Ole Miss people is feeling like, why aren't we a destination? Why can't Ole Miss be where you go to have every element of possible success that there is? You will have a statue. The field will be named after you. Really bad timing that an entire documentary came out earlier this season about your character arc and how much Oxford played a role in that. Terrible timing, because all of 2 months later, you're leaving them with your deuces in the air. So I can see that element, but I have been confused. Like, for $90 million, you're telling me you wouldn't consider another opportunity? You're trying to tell me that a fan base like LSU isn't a step up? Don't come at me, Ole Miss fans. I'm just talking about culture and support right now. I'm not saying that they couldn't ultimately get there, but it's why he pointed out, like, our stadium's not packed, and this is the best season that we've had. So why would I start to think that this place could become a Mecca? Like that, I think all of those conversations being at play were fair. But the way in which it was handled toward the end, dragging this on as long as you possibly could, if you knew what you were ultimately going to do, if you knew that there was a real possibility you were going to go, continuing to drag this out, leaving anyone in the dark, if that is true, is the wrong way to go about it. And then, yeah, almost having like well, okay, fine, I will leave this place worse in my exit. That's where the disdain is going to come in. But as far as him taking the LSU job, Jay, I think it's a perfect fit. So it is kind of difficult because I think Lane Kiffin's going to win at LSU. I think LSU is going to win with Lane Kiffin. And I'm sorry that was riddled with controversy and at Ole Miss's expense, but it ultimately is the right decision for both parties. And so the frustration and the emotional element, I think, comes into play the way it was all executed, not the truth that he wanted a new challenge, and that's okay.
I just think, and I'm like you, like your decision is your decision.
Yeah.
Like you have the right to look at all options and then make your decision. But don't get mad at the players when they do that. Like that's the thing. Like when the players decide to look at all options before they make their decision, we always talk about loyalty, commitment, sticking through the process. That's what we teach to our kids. That's what we teach to the players. But then the coaches are also looking at options, even while they're playing the games the day before, knowing that they're not going to be there the next day. Like my whole thing is he knew 3 weeks ago
where he was
going. So if you knew at the time, you could have just said, they wasn't going to let you coach anyways through the playoffs. You could have went ahead and left if you wanted to. Why? Because the other coaches would have had a game or two now that they would have played at the end of the year to get something under their belt before they went to the playoffs. Now, their first game is in the playoffs. So it wouldn't have mattered if you left 2 weeks ago or if you left today. You wasn't going to stay there to coach the players. So you might as well left in and gave your coaches an opportunity to have 2 games under their belt before they go into the playoffs. Yeah. That was my argument.
Yeah.
That's why I said, to me, he already knew if he was about the players, he would have made that decision to bounce, because every domino effect came off of who? As soon as Lane Kiffin made his decision, you start seeing all the other jobs start to pop and go.
Oh, yeah.
But some may have been changed, may have been all the way up to the last minute or two. Like, you just don't know. But a lot of it came off the domino effect. Or where's he going to do it? But most of the people knew at this point in time, it was LSU.
Yeah.
But you should have gave your team an opportunity to coach with those other 2 guys. I mean, the other coaches before, that's all I'm saying.
I agree. I think providing them more of a cushion to get adjusted to executing without you, an in-game operation without you, would have been a courtesy. I totally agree. And that's where some of it did become very selfish. And I know a lot of people look at it and say, well, it's his life and it's his decision, but you're in a career that impacts so many other people. So selfishness is actually a detriment. And I think it's bitten him in the tail in the past. And so I think that the way he goes about some of these things is what rattles people more than what the ultimate decision was. Like, I think it had emotion settled, and had it been done the right way, even through agitation, you can look at it and go, I mean, look, they offered him $90 million, and that's just to him. The money being offered to him to staff whoever the frick he wants, roster on a yearly basis, and NIL, guys, this is an exorbitant amount of money being thrown at him. And so I get it to some capacity, but it's a very Lane Kiffin way to go about it. And that's why it has made it more impactful on the negative side than just a coach choosing to go another direction. But
you could have quieted it.
Go ahead.
You could have quieted it down by saying, hey, I don't want to talk about my job. I don't want Ole Miss to talk about my job. I don't want anybody to talk about my job until my regular season is over.
Right.
Because what would have happened, Taylor, if they went to the SEC championship? What if Auburn would have beat Alabama Saturday? They would have been the SEC championship game. How would that have looked that you left before the SEC championship game? Or do you hold that decision now another week? So now signing day is already gone through. It would have really put chaos in flux. So what would have been your decision at that point in time?
Yeah, if you were headed to a title game. It's a great question. And I'm sure it's something he was holding on to and why he was postponing as long as he could. And ultimately it's why Keith, the Ole Miss athletic director, was like, you tell us by this point or we're moving on without you, because we can't exist in limbo. It's unfair. But they ultimately decided to go ahead and make Pete Golding their defensive coordinator, their head coach. There is no interim tag. They have said that he's their guy. They feel certain that he is ready for this moment and the locker room is going to rally behind him. So they jumped on that very quickly. And I think while Golding is very capable and has paid his dues and I'm sure will do very well, it also is probably because so many of the other ones got snatched up. Like we all heard that Ole Miss was interested in Jon Sumrall. You got to assume they would have talked to an Alex Golesh, and, Clark Lee signed his extension. Eli Drinkwitz signed his extension. Like a lot of the candidates that have been on everyone's radar were locked up by the time that Lane Kiffin's decision was out. So Ole Miss is kind of last at the table. So I hate the logistics of all of it. I really do. In the same vein, do I think Lane will be successful at LSU? Yeah. But man, get your freaking popcorn when they head to Oxford next year. Holy cow, the place might actually implode. He may be turned away at the stadium. I mean, they are going to, they're going to be like, you want to see a rowdy environment?
Did you not hear about the part they tried to run him off the highway?
Yeah, I did hear about
Hit
that.
him to the airport?
I mean, guys, it got dramatic. Like,
like they changed the flight landing mid-flight to where they was going to land the plane at because of fear of, like, think about it. That place is going to go crazy. Now, I'll say this. Lane did an outstanding job at Ole Miss. He brought them some of the best seasons they've ever had. And I think you still need to appreciate, what he's done. But no one leaves a relationship most of the time on good terms, right? It's just hard to do. But how you leave things matters.
It does matter. And unfortunately, this is someone who has had less than stellar exits in his career prior. So it just plays directly in to some of the feedback. But it's not only a breakup, you're being left for another woman. Like that's also this, you're being left for like your arch nemesis, and that's ultimately why he couldn't coach in the postseason. I've also seen a lot of people confused by that. Like, okay, Ole Miss, I get it. I hear you, but are you cutting your nose off to spite your face a little bit? Because you aren't a program that has titles to your name, and this is probably your best chance at it. Like, wouldn't it be worth seeing it through to fruition? But you got to keep in mind, you're going to have him in the building fully understanding everything and relationships and whatever, to then poach him and bring him and all the intel and all, not that he doesn't already have it, but you don't add that time frame when you know he is going down the road to it. It's a different situation than Jon Sumrall, who is being allowed to finish season with Tulane. Tulane and Florida are not in the same league. We're not talking about potential competitors. Those are very different situations. Him continuing to finish that season is the right decision for Tulane as well. Lane Kiffin continuing to coach for Ole Miss would not have been the best thing for Ole Miss, and ultimately it would have been another feather in the cap of Lane Kiffin's if he ultimately ends up going far, winning a title, and Ole Miss is going, oh, we are not helping your star shine anymore.
Tulane is, like you said, it's totally different. Like everyone knows, if you get the shot to coach at Florida, coach at Tulane, what you gonna do? Like that's a no-brainer, right? But you in the SEC though, and it supposed to be equal playing fields, and Ole Miss has had stellar seasons the last couple of years, even though it hadn't made the playoffs, it hadn't been the SEC championship. They still had stellar seasons.
Yeah,
and that's where it's hard at because, you're a pretty girl. You're like, dang, I was a pretty girl, and then he left me for a pretty girl. Like
I brought a lot to the table.
And so, all right, so it's you get it. You know what I'm saying? So you like, hey, yeah, you have a right to be upset. Like no one wants to, just something was great, and all of a sudden you let it leave so easily. But I just, it's hard. Like Pete Golding, like you said, is a really, really good coach. And I think Ole Miss had to make that decision as well quickly because you had to keep your roster intact and not let guys' heads start thinking everything else. And you have to let them feel like, no, we still care about you. So we're going to just position someone right now, especially because we do have a chance. And the thing is, didn't Lane's offense coordinator go with him though?
Yes.
So not Carly Weiss, it's Chris Weiss. Well, his son Weiss, he went with him. So who's calling plays?
Yeah.
Like, people always think you can plug and play. No, you can't. That's why there's a difference between a $90 million coach and, whatever. There's a difference between it's a $200 million player and this player, right? You can't just plug and play sometimes. Like, yes, you can be in a certain situation. You can be in a bad situation. You can be in a good situation. But Lane has been a great play caller everywhere he's been. That's a fact that we can all attest to.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So he sees things before he calls the next play.
Yeah.
He's setting something up. You can't just start calling plays and all of a sudden think I'm going to do it the way he did it. So who's ever calling plays, they got to do it their way. It's kind of like Coach Nitz did at Auburn, right?
Yeah.
Coach Freeze had his way of calling plays, and when Nitz got his opportunity, he went totally to the way he knows how to do it. And that's how you have success doing it. Do it your way.
So we're going to do this as we transition to another coach update. I'm going to get your grade on the match. We are not talking about the way in which it transpired, solely the fact that Lane Kiffin is the head coach at LSU. How do you grade that one?
I'm talking about everybody gonna have to say an A, right?
I think so.
Yeah, you have to say an A. Like, he's the hottest coach to go get right now, right? Like, he puts up numbers. Like, I don't fault him and fault LSU for going after him. Like, who wouldn't?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you're a competitor. Like, you're going to go after the top dog, and you're gonna swing until you miss. So I don't blame him. Like, it's definitely an A of getting him to LSU.
I agree. And like I said, I think it fits from a cultural perspective. Like, I think that I would give it an A as well. Alex Golesh takes over as head coach of Auburn University. Obviously, Jason is incredibly closely tied, was down there on the plains when the Iron Bowl happened, and I'm sure it was yet again a heartbreaking loss. Auburn just seems to find a way to do those this season, and hopefully that trend will change with a guy like Alex Golesh, who did speak about that element in his introductory press conference, saying that finishing is a mentality and fourth quarter is a discipline, and that will be trained daily, so that when your back is against the wall and those kinds of moments, you are disciplined and mentally sound enough to not shoot yourself in the foot. Like, that's what Auburn keeps getting in its own way. And that discipline piece has to be a priority. And I can say firsthand, having covered Alex Golesh many a time, that is where he starts. He starts with discipline and hard work. This guy is the real deal. And I feel very excited about it. It's one of those that I didn't really see coming. I think that it was not the expected one. I mean, he was very far along in the process with Arkansas, and unfortunately things got a little sloppy with Arkansas, and that got leaked prior to him being ready for it, and I think it made him pull back. It's wild how some of the mistakes of all of these schools ended up being the thing that landed guys elsewhere. And it didn't just happen to one school. Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, LSU, I can point out flaws in their search across the board, but it ultimately is what landed the chips where they fell. And for Auburn, it is Alex Golesh. And he obviously has been at South Florida, the head coach there. They've had great success, but prior to that was the offensive coordinator for Josh Heupel at Tennessee. He was at UCF prior to that. He brings Cody Burns with him, Auburn alum, who will be taking over and named associate head coach, returns to the Plains, which is always great to see some alum return. But obviously this one happened very quickly, Jay, and announced very quickly. He got to the Plains very quickly, coming off of that Iron Bowl loss. But I know that you're close to the program, so certainly don't want to put you in any sort of weird position, but just whatever you can say about this hiring.
Well, I was actually in the building when all of this transpired and everything. So no one really knew who was going to be named the head coach Sunday morning, right? So everyone has speculations that, it may be DJ Durkin. You also heard Golesh's name come up a little bit the day before, but that's just kind of like, something there or something not there. You really don't know.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, you had a team meeting and the team is addressed. And then at the time we had recruits in town. So I'm dealing with the recruits at this time. And we're having a panel discussion about Auburn and, Ronnie and, even Keldra Faulk showed up after a heartbreaking loss the night before and talked to these recruits about what it means to be an Auburn person. And he still showed up and everything. So then you had Mike Blanc, who's the chaplain, and Jarrell, who also played at Auburn. So it was a panel to talk to the recruits about what it means to play at Auburn and what it means to tie into the Auburn family. And as this was all transpiring, the recruits was told that, hey, coach wants to meet with you immediately. So he's in the air. And as soon as he landed, he's on the phone talking with some of the recruits.
Wow.
And as soon as he got to the building, he called a team meeting again with the team, had a met with the current team, and then met with the recruits immediately afterwards and met with their parents immediately afterwards.
That's impressive.
So immediately on the job, he jumped right in, feet first, from that standpoint. And then, I got a chance to talk to him for about 20 minutes, shake his hand, get to know him a little bit. But I could see already that there was a lot of things they had to try to racing through their mind that they got to try to figure out and get done, right, in a short period of time. And like I said, when I tell you things have to go so fast, man, it is so fast to the point that I can't imagine these guys sleeping more than 3 hours right now.
Yeah.
Just trying to get everything figured out. But I think this one, they kept it close to the hip. I think they kept it close to the hip when it was announced. I think, like I said, a lot of speculation was elsewhere. But you look at him, you're talking about a guy that can dial it up offensively. But Joe Milton, Hendon Hooker, those quarterbacks developed, Brock Purdy, all played in the NFL.
Yep.
So if you're a quarterback and you're Deuce Snyder, if you're Ashton Daniels and all these guys, like, you might be chomping at the bit to say, shoot, like he's put guys in the NFL.
Yeah.
And, he just had a 3,000-yard passer and a 1,000-yard rusher at South Florida. So, so there's a lot that can transpire the next month. But if you're Auburn, you're in a unique situation.
Yeah.
And everything. Because you got to think there's going to be some recruits that he recruited in South Florida. And when has Auburn been really good? It's when they have some dudes on their team from South Florida.
Oh, yeah.
So that he's probably going to bring some of those guys. He's going to mix it in with a lot of the talent that Auburn already has on the roster that they can contain and retain. And it keeps you from being in a rebuild, but you may get an addition. So we'll see what happens. But like I said, this is a coach that one thing I like in his press conference, he said national championship. The other thing he talked about was standard. The other thing he talked about was winning the fourth quarter don't happen during the season. Winning the fourth quarter happens in the off season. You have to prepare for it in the off season. As a player, that's facts. You have to do that stuff in winter workouts. You have to do that stuff in summer workouts. You don't get to the season and say, all of a sudden, we're going to win the fourth quarter. It don't happen like that. You do it in the offseason. You create hard work. And those are the things I like what he said is I like, okay, that kind of gets you going.
I tweeted this the other day, and I said that I would get into it a little bit more on the podcast, so I want to expand a little bit. I have covered Alex Golesh at South Florida. I've been on the sidelines for a few of his games, and I literally have done a report on it because it stood out to me so much. This is one of the most involved and active head coaches I have ever seen on a sideline. That doesn't mean that these head coaches aren't active. Get out of here. But it was he has hands in everything to the point that it caught my attention, to the point that I had to make note of it. I'm telling you, every single injury, this guy is out on the field with the training staff, with the guy. And a lot of the coaches will go out, check, kind of get a gauge, and then go back and go. No, he is with them until they come off the field. One, he was very involved in play calling at South Florida. I know he has said that his offensive coordinator, Joel Gordon, is going to call his plays, but it is incredibly collaborative. He is on the headset the entire time. He has a real, gauge of what he wants in terms of offensive execution. So there's that. He is jumping in and out of position groups up and down the sideline, has something to point out on the iPad, and then will come over to me and do a quarter interview, which is probably a nuisance. I'm not delusional enough to think any of those head coaches want to talk to me in between quarters, okay? He gives the most insightful and like is really perceptive and communicative, even in the height of a game chaos. So I have been so impressed by his execution, his processes, and just how involved he is in everything. And I think that Auburn is really going to appreciate that. No slight to the previous coaches, but there's going to be a noticeable difference in what all Alex Golesh has his hands in and how intentional he is with all of it. Player relations are huge with him. I asked his quarterback, Byron Brown, who you just alluded to, incredibly efficient. And especially in that offense, he has really done well leading it. And he's a big, big dude. And I know Power 4 schools have inquired about him in the past. And I asked him, no slight to South Florida, but what has kept you here? Like, there are bigger opportunities elsewhere. And his answer was Alex Golesh, that piece. And he rides for his players and they reciprocate. So relationships are big with him, which goes a long way at Auburn. So I really think that while it wasn't what I anticipated Auburn was going to end up with, I think it's going to be great. And I'm very, very excited for this fit. Now, I think the very real element is there are some big pieces that still need to fall here. I would also say that's the case for LSU because Blake Baker is interviewing at Tulane, if all the reports are true. And
head coach job?
Yes.
Oh.
And he's been very efficient as their defensive coordinator, and Lane keeping him would be huge. The same situation is true on the Plains. If Alex Golesh is able to retain DJ Durkin as defensive coordinator, we are in business. I mean, Auburn is in business, okay? That piece still needs to fall. There are some other very impactful elements of that coaching staff that I think would make a lot of sense to be retained. The quarterback situation is going to be one to watch. I know you don't want to hear it, Auburn fans, but it's relevant. And it's something that Alex Golesh is going to have to figure out what's best for your offense, what's best based on who you've got in the room, and making sure you give yourself the chance to figure that out. But as far as the guy's perspective on coaching, the way he goes about his business, and the type of freaking high-flying offense that he's going to bring back to Auburn maybe didn't expect it, but ended up with one of the best hires in this cycle. I really firmly believe that.
Well, like I said, it's it's an exciting time for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Newness is it's not easy because you look at things all the way through, right? There's coaches that was on staff that's now going to be elsewhere, right? There's relationships. So the key is, yes, when your coach is not there anymore, it is hard when you have to hurry up and adapt to someone that you may not even know.
Yeah.
Right. But you got to give it a chance. You got to give it an opportunity to sit down and be able to dissect these conversations. Get everybody out your ear. Everybody's going to get in your ear trying to tell you what's best for you. They don't come to practice for you. They don't go to school for you. They don't know what's in your heart. Give it a time for you to make your decision based off the information that you receive. Don't let other people try to tell you where you need to go and do this and that. You could be running from a great situation, but have the time to sit down, because it may come to a point where they may say, hey, some guys we want to keep, then some guys, may not fit what we're trying to do, and we may want to bring other guys in.
Right.
So that's their right. You know what I'm saying? So, and at the end of the day, they're still trying to figure out the staff aspect, because they probably do want to keep some portions of this staff, because there are some really good guys on this staff that are good coaches and good relatable to kids, right? And there may be some history of relationships there. So it's not going to all get solved in 72 hours.
Right.
As much as we all want things.
We love it.
Right. But it's just not going to happen that way. So I think every coach in every school needs some grace right now to get things ironed out, because this is not a race. It's a marathon. You're not winning a championship tomorrow. I know it's signing day, but as much as things flip-flop nowadays with transfer portal and everything, you're not winning a national championship just off your signing class.
One thing at a time. And decisions have to be made very intentionally, and so you don't want to make them out of desperation or rush, because as we have all realized, Auburn's schedule next year is quite brutal. I'm not going to lie. You add a game with Florida, you go to Tennessee, you add the LSU game back, you've got Ole Miss, you've got Mississippi State, you've got Arkansas. Of course, we've got Alabama and Georgia. Both will be on the road. So, yeah, this will be quite the intro to an SEC head coaching opportunity for Alex Golesh. So you got to make sure you've got the right guys to run this thing for you. All right, well, we already kind of alluded to it, so let's go ahead and transition to the Florida Gators, who locked up their future head coach in Jon Sumrall, in one that also took a lot of turns because Florida was still very much feeling optimistic that Lane Kiffin was potentially headed to Gainesville. A lot of reports that Jon Sumrall was all but finalized down on the plains at Auburn, and whatever transpired on both of those sides, Florida locked in on Jon Sumrall. Jon Sumrall reciprocated, and down to Gainesville he went. Now, like I mentioned, he is continuing to coach Tulane, who is playing in the American Conference Championship this weekend. They will face North Texas, and the winner of that game, the American Conference champion, is fully expected to get a spot, that group of 5 spot in the college football playoffs. It could be a couple more games for Jon Sumrall to coach down in New Orleans, but ultimately the future for the Florida Gators, it was definitely interesting. The reception wasn't the most positive. I think that Florida fans really felt like it was too similar to the Billy Napier hire, but I, for one, don't see that. I think that Jon Sumrall is a phenomenal coach, and I think that he's going to do very well at Florida. But, you know, unfamiliarity is not always comfortable, and Florida fans are freaking tired of what the past few years have been. So that ultimately probably played a role, but I think if you give him an opportunity, Sumrall's a stud, and I think he's going to do well in Gainesville as well. So break down what you
I always say this with any coach, you have to be open-minded and give the opportunity first, right? You can't be closed-minded and already put your expectations of, well, this is going to happen, or this is like you can't create that negativity right off the bat. Yes, he's a group of 5 coach, right? Like, okay, he was at Troy, he was at Tulane, and he had success at both programs, and now he gets a chance to come to Florida. And whether that was your first choice at Florida or not, like, he was still highly pursued by other schools.
Yeah.
So it's a reason for him to be the candidate that he is, right? Because he's pursued by multiple schools. So there's something there. And a lot of times is how you relate to kids, how you relate to your staff, how you get the best out of kids, and everything. So I think overall, if you're Florida, don't be closed-minded.
Yeah.
Give this an opportunity. I know that the Billy Napier thing didn't go well, and you're looking at, well, this is another coach we got from Louisiana, and we got him from Lafayette, and now we got another one from Tulane. Like, give it a chance, because at the end of the day, most coaches start off a group of 5 coaches,
right,
and become coordinators sometime at bigger conferences, and then they become head coaches. But everybody had to start somewhere.
Right.
So just give it an opportunity, give it a chance, and see what happens. Now, the problem is, Taylor, he can coach this week in the championship game, but you got 3.5 weeks to retain your roster come January 2nd, transfer portal open up. If you're in the playoffs, how are you going to do both?
It was wild to see. I mean, he was at practice in New Orleans yesterday morning and then was on a private jet and did his introductory press conference in Gainesville by the afternoon. Like, it is wild.
That's what I'm saying. So did North Texas coach get a job somewhere?
Oklahoma State.
So you got 2 coaches in similar situations that are playing this weekend, and one of them going to be in a difficult situation. The one that loses is going to get ahead at their school, but the one that wins, you're going to be exhausted over the next couple of weeks.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Trying to do 2 jobs in one. Like, hey, buddy, you know what? Hey, coordinators, this is why I pay you a lot of money. Y'all run the practice. Y'all run everything. I got to go over here and do this. I'm going to come back as much as I can. I'll be on the sidelines. You got to come up with some type of plan. You going to wear yourself out trying to fly back and forth.
No, that is crazy. I would assume that would be That would be his MO. But yeah, I mean, there will be very little sleep through the end of the year. That's for sure. But Jon Sumrall has won everywhere he's been. He said that in his press conference, like, I'm a winner and we're going to win here. And I think that, what he inherited at Troy was a bad team. I mean, they had not been winning. They were in no position, and he took them to a Sun Belt championship, won the title in his first year. And then both years at Tulane, they end up in the American championship as well. So this is a guy that has a proven track record of winning. He played at Kentucky. He spent time at Ole Miss. Like, this guy gets it. And I think that he brought the energy, the spunk, the little bit of, he's got a screw loose, but like in the best way possible, because he's just a freaking ball coach. You know what I mean? But I've said this on multiple podcasts because I was very outspoken about feeling like Sumrall was a great fit for Auburn. That is not to say that Auburn didn't end up with a great fit, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I did see Jon Sumrall, given the in-state tie, his wife being an alum at Auburn, making a lot of sense. And the best way I could put it is I have seen him on the sideline ripping into his guys, expecting discipline, expecting execution. Like, he is hard-nosed, but the guys want to grab a beer with him. Like, there is a balance of that relatability factor while still being a no BS type of coach. And Jon Sumrall toes that line very effectively. I also thought it was a great sign how many players were at his introductory press conference. DJ Lagway was there, and they know that comes with cameras and social media and eyes and ears, and they're publicly backing this guy. And I think the fan base needs to do that as well. So how do you grade this one in terms of fit?
It's hard to put a grade on the ones outside of Kiffin because that was like a
initial perception based on what you know now.
So I would say I only give an A to LSU's hire, okay, right? Because Lane's done it at this level. Mm-hmm. Right. He's done it at this level. And that's the reason I give them an A. All the rest of them, I think, are good hires. I just give all the rest of them a B until they prove that they can do it at this level. Taylor, that's not just my professional. That's my realistic answer. Because I was going to say this. If I'm Kentucky fans, I'm ticked off.
I know.
Because you could have made this decision when you had a chance. And his name is being tied to Kentucky, and that's where he played at. Mm-hmm. So you get another Clark Lee coming back to coach at his university. You get a Brent Key coming back coach at his university. So the heart and desire is going to be all the way in there. Not to say it won't be at Florida, but you had your shot.
I know.
But you kept psyching yourself out. And then you get blown out in your arch rival game. You say, "Oh no, we're done."
Yeah,
now your guy you could have got is taken. I know. You see what I'm saying? So that's when you got to make decisions. You got to make decisions. But
yeah,
I give, like I said, I give it a B because he just haven't coached at this level yet.
That's fair.
He could end up being an A.
Yeah,
of what he does.
I'm gonna give it a B plus just to be a little different. All right, let's talk about the
A plus, B plus, B minus, the A's and B's. See.
All right, well, let's talk about Arkansas, who also got a coach out of the American Conference. Former Memphis head coach Ryan Silverfield gets the head job and is in Fayetteville to take over the Hogs after they moved on from Sam Pittman. And interim head coach Bobby Petrino unfortunately couldn't get much progress going either. They were also tied to a few other names, some very interesting ones. I don't know which one have validity and which don't, but ultimately landing on Ryan Silverfield, I think obviously geographically it makes a lot of sense. It's an area of the country that is going to be very impactful recruiting-wise. He's already flipped 3 in-state guys yesterday that I saw, so I think he's going to tap into that piece of it, which makes a lot of sense. He was at Memphis for a long time. He was one of the longer tenured coaches in the American, and they've been very successful. Memphis has always been a team that even in Power 4 games, you're going, they beat Arkansas this year. So the irony that he ended up getting that job, I think that what worries me a little bit about Arkansas has nothing to do with Ryan Silverfield. I think that the perception around Arkansas has been tainted a little bit this year. And I think that starts at the top. That starts above the head coach. And there's been a lot of talk about Arkansas just backing basketball and baseball so much that football has fallen to the wayside a little bit. And my hope is that Ryan Silverfield reinvigorates that a little bit, because I think college football is better, SEC football is better when Arkansas is relevant and when Arkansas is really contesting. So, I mean, you feel that way about all of these programs, but Arkansas has the makings. I always say Fayetteville is one of my hidden gems in the SEC. Every time I go there, I'm always like, this is like underrated. It's a great town, great food. Of course, Jason's going to bring that up, but great people, great fan base. They've got what they need. And I think that they need a bit more support, you know, when your athletic director makes some of the comments that he has made this year, and even in some of the CFP since he has become, you know, stepped into that kind of temporary commissioner role with some of the changes. Some of those interviews weren't taken very seriously. I think it's kind of tainted the perception a little bit. So I like Ryan Silverfield a lot, and I think it makes a lot of sense given what he's been doing at Memphis. He just needs the buy-in, and I think if they're going to kind of right that ship, it can't all be predicated on your head coach being a home run hire, because y'all got to change things from a more holistic perspective. But I think he could be the guy. Talk to me about this one.
Yeah, I kind of called this one after they beat Arkansas, and then Arkansas had, let Sam Pittman go.
Yeah.
I said they're going to go right after the guy that they just beat. Now, do I think that may have been their first choice? I don't. I think there are probably some other choices that they had on the thing first. But once the domino effect starts to happen, it starts to go like quickly, right? Yeah. So I think they still got a solid coach. I really do. I think what this guy's done at Memphis has been really good. You saw Mike Norvell be at Memphis and went to Florida State, took them 13-0, didn't get a chance to go to the national championship. And ever since then, they got hit hard because of not getting into the playoffs.
Yeah,
that year. They're still reaping repercussions of that.
Yeah,
I think they're in a totally different scenario if they get in at that year. Yeah. Now you think about this. There's 3 coaches from the group of 5 that's gotten it.
From the American.
Yeah, from the American, from that conference. That tell you how strong that conference is, though.
Very strong.
You got 3 coaches from that conference that's well respected that now getting big opportunities at SEC jobs. So
and Eric Morris went to Oklahoma State. So 4 of their coaches.
4. Yeah, so 4 guys out of that conference gone to Power 4. So if you're a big time coach or coordinator or something, you're trying to get into the head coaching round, you might want to look at the American Conference, because you go there and succeed, you're back into the big dogs as the head coaches. So it's a very competitive conference and everything. So Arkansas shocks me, Taylor. You got Walmart, you got Tyson money. Mm-hmm. Like, why is it that they don't want to spend more money on their football program than they do? Like, I'm not so sure they're even in the top 12 when it comes to spending on rosters, and even coaching salaries. They're at the bottom almost in the SEC when you think of head coach to coordinators. So kind of what you spend is what you're going to get. Yeah. So if you're going to compete in the SEC, you better be able to put some dollars behind your program. Yeah. And football, typically at every university, I thought football is your biggest attribute to bring money to the other programs. So you need football to be a success to feed your other programs. But if football is not getting fed the finances to make that program the best program to feed your other ones, what are you doing?
They've put a lot into, I mean, you've got John Calipari now leading that basketball program and insistent that a lot of that revenue goes to their program. And baseball is a very, very big deal in Fayetteville. So I think weirdly enough, the pendulum has kind of swung to those 2 being the higher priorities. I mean, their athletic director said this season, we are built to win championships in basketball. We are built to win championships in baseball. We are not built to win championships in football, which was such a jarring comment, and almost said with like it is what it is, instead of a sense of urgency of like, we're in the SEC, we got to contend for championships in football. But maybe Silverfield challenges that.
Well, if you're a fan base of Arkansas, that should have ticked you off because you're telling me, okay, don't get mad that we go 7-6 or
Like, just like for
6
basketball.
because because that's what we should be happy with because that's what we're funding for.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like if you want to fund to go win and get in the playoffs, then it's gonna cost you something.
Mhm.
Like, and I'm not sure they ready to spend. And maybe, like you said, maybe Ryan Silverfield changes things and maybe he's able to flip some guys and recruit. And he's a younger guy, energetic.
Yep. Because at Memphis, they had FedEx money. So he's used, even though he's coming from a group of 5 opportunity, the NIL world is very familiar to him. They were actually very ahead of a lot of the schools in their conference because he was marketing to that and utilizing one of the big corporations that wanted to tap in. So I think that he is equipped to go push a little bit more. And I had their game this year, ironically, they upset South Florida. And it was like a last minute, they were down 31-17 going into the fourth quarter. And they had a tough loss the weekend before. And they ended up coming back and winning that game. And I interviewed him post game, and he got choked up in the interview. And when I first walked up, he was hugging a player. And I was like, hey, coach, can we get an interview? And he turned to me and he had tears streaming down his face. It wasn't to send them into a championship. It was like week 7. He loves his freaking players. Like, it is real for him. And I think in this day and age, that piece of it maybe is a little more challenging to build that depth and that connection because guys can maybe be there for a year. The relationship piece is very important to him, and he will do what's right for the players, even if it's not the popular thing. He is a player guy. So I do think he's a good fit in Fayetteville. It's just going to be a bit of a tougher climb for him than some of these others, which is why I think I would give this one more of a B- than the B+ that I'm giving Sumrall and Golesh, but definitely real potential.
I'm just giving B's.
We know you took your way out of this game. It's really annoying. All right, last one we got to talk about because this has been lengthy. Sorry, everyone, but there's plenty to talk about. Kentucky. Kentucky moves on from Mark Stoops, who was the longest tenured coach in the SEC. That title now goes to Kirby Smart. The era ends after being brutally shut out by their rival Louisville, who has not had the best season in arguably the worst conference, the ACC, this year. So I think putting up a goose egg against them might have been the nail in the coffin because ultimately I kind of didn't think Kentucky was going to do it this year, given what all else was happening. And like you mentioned, Jon Sumrall was a guy that has always kind of been thought as the next in line, if you will, and he gets snatched up by a program that if all goes well, you expect Sumrall's going to be there for a long time. So I really didn't know if they were going to move on from Stoops, even though it has been a really, really bad year in a variety of ways, honestly, beyond just the amount of losses. It's been ugly. And it looks like the wheels fell off in a lot of capacity. But ultimately, that result did it for them, and they decided to move on. And they bring in Will Stein, who is an alum and has been the offensive coordinator at Oregon. So he's been winning a lot of ball and ultimately wants to come back home. And I think that will probably provide a lot of spark. But one thing I want to say is, unfortunately, in this business, you're often remembered for your last effort. And I don't think that's fair for Mark Stoops. What Mark Stoops inherited and what he did for Kentucky, obviously it wasn't able to be sustained his entire tenure. And sometimes it's kind of like the Gus Malzahn thing. Sometimes it just runs its course and it's time for a change. But I don't think in any world Mark Stoops should not be remembered for the good that he did at Kentucky. Because you want to talk about not being a football school. Kentucky was not a football school. We're talking consecutive bowl games, bowl wins, 10-win seasons. The facilities are night and day different from what he inherited. So I think so much credit and respect needs to be granted to him. Unfortunately, the time just came for some change, and I think Will Stein is going to bring a new energy to Lexington.
This one here is Will Stein played quarterback at Louisville. So let's not go get our guy that played for us, but let's go get our arch rivals guy.
But he's an in-state guy.
In-state, yes. So I like it. They went and got an offensive coordinator guy I think overall, like you said, Stoops did a nice job at Kentucky, but it's kind of ran its course, right? And if you don't get blown out the way that you got blown out, maybe they rethink this. But to get blown out the way you got blown out, they had no choice. At that point in time, you lost luster in recruiting, you lost luster in your locker room, and it's kind of like your voice is going stale. And at this time, it needs new energy. And, he may get on somewhere else as a coordinator or something, who knows? But because he is a good coach. Sometimes change is just needed, and it's time for change in Kentucky. And I think they got on a 3-game winning streak. They beat Auburn. They beat, 2 other teams right there in the 3 games.
They beat the crap out of Florida.
Right. And everyone was like, oh.
They're back.
They made the announcement that they was keeping Stoops. But then once you lose your arch rival the way you lost to him in a goose egg, like, I think that's when things just unraveled, and they like, okay, we thought, but you can't get beat that bad.
No.
But Kentucky's a good job. You're competing against basketball again. As your primary. You're talking about a stadium that seats 22,000 people in a basketball game.
Crazy.
You're getting 22,000 people at a basketball game.
Yeah.
So if you average that up over the season, if you get 20 home games, you're equal to the same amount of people that you get at football games over 8-game season or 7-game season, home game season. So I get their madness of putting more money into Kentucky basketball. It's more hotter, it's more famous there. So again, it's going to be an interesting season next year for everybody, because I can't tell you who's going to be good. I can't tell you all the firings are done. I think there's 1 or 2 more coming. So I just, it's hard.
It's the Wild West right now. My mind is blown. I got to be honest. I have seen so many he's coming home about Will Stein. He played at Louisville. I am shocked. I just thought, and he's been like Big Blue Nation, all this stuff. I just thought he played at Kentucky. I didn't realize it was just he's from Kentucky.
Yeah.
Okay, the irony of that after what Louisville just did to Kentucky is not lost on me. You guys, this was far too much to keep up with. And your girl is calling the MAC championship game, which I got to learn a lot about. So forgive me, Kentucky people. But I think that this is exciting for them. And I think that he will provide a little bit of a new spark. And I hate to say it, but it does kind of start to seem like, for a lot of these coaches that really kind of establish themselves in the previous version of college football, this day and age, man, like it is not going to suit all of them for that type of coaching foundation. It's ultimately why the greatest of all time, Nick Saban, chose to hang it up. Like, this is a different game that you have to play as a head coach right now. And the saying, you either die the hero or live long enough to become the villain. I don't think Mark Stoops became the villain, but I do think it ultimately became a mismatch. And it's not a slight at him as a ball coach. It's the day and age we're in and what you're having to deal with in terms of portal, NIL, retention, and all the things. But I want the best for him because I think very highly of Coach Stoops.
Everybody gets fired at some point. Unless you just
let's talk about it.
No, I haven't been fired, but I haven't been fired. But I'm just saying, in the NFL, before you get traded, you know, or someone gets cut, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're in this business long enough, you'll get fired. You know, like, think about it. It don't matter if you sign a $100 million contract like Brian Kelly did. He got fired for 4 years. He get $100 million to do 4 years of work. So, you know,
so crazy.
Lane Kiffin has been fired and hired.
Yeah.
And the chances is that he'll be fired again someday from LSU. You know, because it's not like you leave LSU to go somewhere else. It's a top 5 college job. So if you don't get it done,
retire there, or he'll get fired.
You retire or you get fired. And as young as he is, he's probably not going to retire.
Yeah.
So think about it. The other coaches won a national championship within their first 3 years. The pressure's on him to win a national championship. The expectation is within the first 3 years.
Agreed.
Brian Kelly just averaged 10-win seasons.
Mm-hmm.
he didn't win a national championship, fired. So to whom much is given, much is required.
You're right about that.
So Kiffin wanted a job. It's a great job, but he best believe it's going to come with a lot of work. And expectations are a lot higher. 11 wins, don't just please them. You got to win a natty. And they want a natty within 3 years. And it's not easy to do in this day and time. No. It's not easy to do in any time. But
certainly not now.
Pressure's on. And you best believe Ole Miss is going to be watching closely.
I mean, Ole Miss's mission is going to be to mess that up. Like, LSU could be on a tear next year, and then they go into Oxford. That will be their Super Bowl. Like, that will be insane. So that is where the chaos stands right now. And amongst all of it, Penn State doesn't have a freaking clue what they're doing. So there's that. This has been the weirdest saga of a coaching cycle. And like Jay said, there could be more. We still don't know. So we will keep our eyes and ears open for any more movement and break it down as it comes. News will continue to come out as these guys structure their staffs, as the transfer portal will open in January. There is a lot still to come. But as we close out this episode, we got to touch on the SEC championship game. And once again, you know who it is. It's Georgia and Bama facing off once again because Texas A&M couldn't get it done and Alabama did. So Ole Miss and Texas A&M had an opportunity, but once again, it's the dogs and the tide. And boy, if that just is not getting quite repetitive. But nonetheless, our friends over at FanDuel have Georgia as a 2.5-point favorite in this one, over-under set at 47.5. Obviously, they played earlier this season. Alabama getting the nod in that one. I think that what's weird about this one, Jay, as familiar as this matchup is for an SEC championship, it is kind of like the upside down when it comes to the weaknesses of these teams, because Alabama's weakness this season has been not being able to establish the run. When's the last time we have said that? And a weakness of Georgia this season has been not being able to generate pass rush. When have we said that in recent years? Like, the weaknesses of these two teams are very uncharacteristic of this matchup in years past. And obviously, I think that each of those maybe being fixed this week will have a direct impact on the win, because if Georgia can get some pressure on Ty Simpson, he is a very different quarterback when he's been pressured. And we know he's had a little bit of a slump in weeks prior, but when there's pressure in his face, his numbers dramatically drop. And I think that is a focus. They also haven't come up with as many takeaways. So that Georgia defense hasn't been the same identity-wise. And then for Alabama, if they are able to kind of pound the rock, run the ball a little bit more, I do think that they have enough of a high fly punt. One of us, it's going to happen every week. A high-flying offense if Ty Simpson does click. It was weird that Ryan Williams didn't really play in the Iron Bowl. I don't know what's going on with that. Also, their tight end, Cuevas, has been out with injury. Do not expect him back this week. And running back Jam Miller, that to me is one of the biggest storylines. He left the Iron Bowl on crutches. There has not been an official report on his availability this week. They were able to discover a little bit of a run game against the number 11 rushing defense going into that game in Auburn, and Jam Miller was a big piece of that. So if he's unable to go and they're down in a tight end as well, I think that offense is up against a lot. But this is going to be a tight game, and for whatever reason, Georgia hadn't been able to really get it done easily against Bama. But ultimately, what do you see kind of transpiring? Because like the Iron Bowl, Bama knows if they lose this one, a shot at the playoff becomes very, very difficult. They knew in the Iron Bowl, losing it had the same implication as well. You win it, both of these teams head to the playoff.
You think if they lose, they're out of it?
I don't know that they're out of it, but it definitely puts them on the same page as you've got to now debate Vandy and Texas, who there's going to be comparable results there. You've got a Utah kind of sitting on the outside looking in, and Miami. I do think it will be a bad precedent for the committee to set that a team would be hindered from playing an extra game, and I think they want to be careful about that. But if they go into Atlanta and Georgia dominates that game, and they barely won the Iron Bowl. They've got a comparable record. There is a world in which Alabama could get left out.
Yeah, that'd be hard for me to punish a team that's actually in the championship game, conference championship game, and a team that's sitting at home.
Yeah, Notre Dame's not even in a conference.
That happened to Auburn in 2017, where Auburn played Georgia in the SEC championship, and Bama didn't. But then Bama got a chance to go play in the whatever playoffs or whatever. I mean, BCS championship, whatever. So to me, that's hard. But if Georgia wins this game lopsided, then yes, the conversation comes up. But if it's a 7-game, 10-point game, maybe not so, right? Because I'm gonna tell you, Alabama's limping into this game.
They are.
Because you're down Jam Miller. Not sure he's gonna be ready to play. He had a bad ankle injury late in the game last week. Kevin Riley didn't play last week, so we still don't know what his status is for this week's championship game. You're down to your third running back, and then on top of that, you utilized Ty Simpson a lot last week in the run game, and he took a lot of hits.
Yeah.
And he only had 122 yards passing with 3 touchdowns. They didn't throw the ball to Ryan Williams at all. Didn't target him out one time, which is very weird. So they're limping into this ball game. And Georgia played Friday, so they get an extra day of rest. And they got an extra day, to get themselves prepared for this game. And I don't care what anybody says, it's almost like a home game because they already knew they was in the championship game. So ticket sales for them was already being sold.
Yep.
Now for Alabama or for Ole Miss, if they'd have got in, they had to wait and see before they could start purchasing tickets and hotel rooms. So there's a lot of things that transpires when it comes to the conference championship game. And this is always a big one because Georgia wins this game, you may get a first round bye.
Yeah.
Right? Because Ohio State and Indiana play each other.
Yeah.
They're ranked 1 and 2. So Georgia wins, you move up at least to number 2 based off who wins that game. So now you get the first round bye. Alabama, if you keep it close, you make the playoffs. You may have a home playoff game in Tuscaloosa for the first round, right? Depending on who you may play there. But it's all going to shape up after this weekend. Like Miami, where's Miami at? Miami didn't even get a chance to play in their conference game. You got Virginia versus Duke. If Duke win, they cannot get in because they're not one of the highest 5 ranks, even though they won their conference. So what does that do for Miami? Miami, you didn't even play your conference championship.
Nope.
What's your argument to get in? You know what I'm saying? So there's so much to say because Miami's look good at times. And are they deserving to be in? That's a question. That's a real question. Are they deserving to get in over Vanderbilt? Like Vandy played a tougher schedule.
Exactly.
It was harder. So a lot's going to shape up. And I think people going to be pins and needles come Sunday night trying to figure out what unfolds with this playoffs. Yeah. Because you got the automatic bidders that get in for winning American Conference. Is there one more other conference that gets in that wins?
No, it's one group of 5 bids. So that could be the American Conference champion, the Sun Belt Conference champion, which JMU is playing Troy, and JMU has a very high likelihood of getting that nod. But if Duke wins, I don't think the ACC would be one of the top 5 conference champions. I think Sun Belt and American would both be ranked ahead of the ACC. And then Big 12, Big 10, SEC champions are all in.
So who gets in from the ACC this year?
No one.
Wow.
It could happen, depending on what happens. I think if Virginia wins the ACC championship, they're in. I don't think Miami gets in. Because of their strength of schedule. Because if you then look at Vandy and Texas in this conversation, strength of schedule is way higher. Yeah. So like the ones that are on the bubble, I think Miami is too far outside.
Yeah, hey, it's a lot of big decisions. That's why we watch the game. That's why we enjoy it come Sunday night, and the decisions are made and people start to set their schedules and where they're going and who's playing. And that's what makes college football so great. So look forward to this weekend. I like this matchup. I think Georgia wins.
That's what I was going to ask. I need your pick.
I think Georgia wins, and I think they beat the spread. I really do. I think Bama's beat up a little bit, and they're not as healthy. You got to believe that Kirby's watching what Auburn defense did last week to Bama, and they're going to reciprocate, right? So you're going to pressure Ty Simpson and make him have to get the ball out. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I've really been very high on Georgia. I will say they were a little lackluster against Georgia Tech. I was like, all right, what is going on? But Oklahoma almost slipped to LSU. So everyone's just limping to the final at this point. And I mean, it does go into play. A lot of these other teams that are likely heading for the playoff, the Oklahomas, the Ole Misses, they get a week of rest, and Georgia and Alabama do not. They have to go beat up on each other again. And so I hear you about not punishing that, but Alabama can't look like, a limp noodle. Know what I mean? But I'm going Georgia as well. I think it will be close, but I think that Georgia pulls this one off, and Kirby's hoisting a trophy in Atlanta. But that's going to do it for us, people. Boy, what a week it has been. What a regular season it has been. Our first regular season as the new show, SEC State of Mind. Obviously, we've been doing this for a while, but since expanding it to the SEC and partnering with FanDuel, we are so grateful. And we're grateful for all of our listeners that make this show a reality, as well as the Believe Network and all of our fantastic supporters, Lindsay, Brandon, everyone that makes it go. We're incredibly grateful to close out the regular season, but continue into the postseason. We ain't going anywhere, fam. And obviously, they won't let us because news keeps coming out every day. So anywho, you want to keep it locked on SEC State of Mind. You can get us wherever you find your podcast. That's the iHeart podcast, Apple, all the things, okay? And then our video format on YouTube every week as well. So make sure you come back next week for whatever the heck happens between now and then, and enjoy Conference Championship weekend. The final selection show will happen on Sunday, so we will know the bracket and be able to preview all the matchups for the playoff, which is going to be awesome. So we look forward to talking to y'all next week. Until then, peace.
Peace.